Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett. Amna Nawaz is on assignment. On the NewsHour tonight, Florida braces for impact as Hurricane Helene barrels toward the Gulf Coast. Israel strikes Hezbollah in Lebanon for a third straight day in preparation for a possible ground invasion. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump continue campaigning in swing states, with polls showing the race as close as ever. And the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog on the precarious and potentially catastrophic situations in Iran and war-torn Ukraine.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
Consumer Cellular. This is Sam.
How may I help you?
This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket.
Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular,
You get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing.
have a nice day.
A successful business owner sells his company and restores his father's historic jazz club with his son. A Raymond James financial advisor gets to know you, your passions, and the way you bring people together. Life well planned.
The Charles F. Kettering Foundation, working to advance inclusive democracies. Learn more at kettering.org.
I love seeing interns succeed. I love seeing them come back and join engagement teams and seeing where they go from there. I get to watch their personal growth. It makes my heart happy.
the Judy and Peter Bloom Kovler Foundation, upholding freedom by strengthening democracies at home and abroad. The Walton Family Foundation, working for solutions to protect water during climate change so people and nature can thrive together. Supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information at macfound.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. In the span of 24 hours, Helene in the Gulf of Mexico has strengthened from a tropical storm into a hurricane. Over the next 24 hours, it's expected to grow even stronger, and it's barreling straight toward Florida. Floridians have been filling sandbags, preparing to hunker down in the face of heavy rains, storm surge, and floods. Earlier today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis urged residents to act now.
Time to make the preparations and put your plan in place today, but that time is running out. This storm, I think, as you know, is basically in the area of Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. It's moving past that, and then it's going to have pretty much a clear runway in the Gulf of Mexico.
Current forecasts show Helene will arrive as a dangerous Category 4 hurricane tomorrow. Jamie Rome is the Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center, and he joins us now from its headquarters in Miami. Thanks for being with us. So, Jamie, where is Helene right now, and what will the next 24 hours look like?
Helene is centered down here just to the north of Cancun, Mexico. It's now emerging out over the open waters of the eastern Gulf of Mexico, where conditions appear especially favorable for development, possibly significant development. And we anticipate Helene to go on and become a major hurricane before it tracks somewhere here over the Florida Panhandle or Big Bend region late on Thursday.
And what about the potential, Jamie, for storm surge and flooding? What does that look like right now?
Unfortunately, it has increased over the last 12 hours with the wind increase and the size increase that we have been talking about all day. So goes the surge risk. And we're now looking at the potential for 15 to 20 feet. You read that correctly, 15 to 20 feet of storm surge in the Big Bend region, with significant surge, less than that, but significant surge extending basically all the way down the Florida west coast. So this is going to have a big and lasting impact for much of the Florida Peninsula, and unfortunately, it's going to spread its impacts deep into the southeast, especially over southern Georgia.
So it's expected to land as a Category 4 storm right now. What does that suggest in terms of wind strength?
For those in the path of that wind, it would be catastrophic damage. Category 4 winds are capable of significant structural damage to all but the most sound and secure buildings. So anything that isn't up to modern building codes or your modern standards are probably going to sustain substantial damage, widespread power outages, trees down, especially in and around Tallahassee. They've got a really big tree canopy. Impassable roads, down power lines. It's just going to be a big mess for people who are in the path of the storm.
So people who are in that path of the storm in the affected areas, they should really heed those evacuation warnings, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Those evacuation orders are issued based off the storm surge forecast from the National Hurricane Center. And in fact, we've been on the phone with the emergency managers all day trying to assist them in that evacuation decision. It's a hard decision for them to make, but it's based off the best and most reliable forecasts that are issued straight from here.
Jamie Rome with the National Hurricane Center. Thanks for your time this evening, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Israel's military said today it's preparing for a ground invasion of Lebanon. U.S. officials are frantically trying to avoid all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah after more than a week of unprecedented Israeli attacks on the militant group, which have killed hundreds and injured thousands more. Nick Schifrin is here now with the details. So, Nick, how tense is the situation along the border right now?
It's extremely tense, Jeff. This has been the deadliest week in Lebanon for decades, and that violence continued today. Israel said that it struck some 350 Hezbollah sites, including some associated with the Intelligence Directorate, to, quote, make it more difficult for Hezbollah to produce an intelligence assessment. Lebanese authorities say the strikes killed 50 on top of the more than 550 killed the previous 2 days. But meanwhile, Hezbollah continued its own strikes into Israel, including its hit villages near the border, wounding at least 2 civilians. Hezbollah also launched its first ballistic missile at Tel Aviv. It was intercepted by Israeli air defense. But as you said, Jeff, Israel went further today than it has in the past, calling up 2 reserve brigades to deploy them to the northern area along the Lebanese border. And the IDF's chiefs of staff, Herzi Halevi, warned today that troops needed to prepare for, quote, possible entry into Lebanon.
We are preparing the process of a maneuver, which means your military boots will enter enemy territory, enter villages that Hezbollah has prepared as large military outposts. You will go in, destroy the enemy there, and decisively destroy their infrastructure. These are the things that will allow us to safely return the residents of the north afterward.
And that is what Israel says is its goal, returning the 60,000 plus residents who have been displaced from their homes since October the 8th, when Hezbollah opened fire into Israel.
So what does de-escalation look like now? What is the U.S. doing to try to prevent an all-out war?
President Biden admitted today that an all-out war was possible. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called the risk of escalation, quote, acute. So they have been scrambling, and they all are in New York with the entire international community. So that makes it possible for them to have meetings with partners and allies. And Western officials, U.S. officials tell me that those partners and allies have been Europeans, Arabs, alongside Israel. And 2 U.S. officials confirmed to me that the U.S. is proposing a temporary ceasefire along the Israel-Lebanon border. It's not ready to be announced yet. One official called it, quote, pretty limited and short-term. But the idea here, Jeff, would be to stop the violence, again, temporarily, in order to try and have a conversation that they've been having for months, which is a diplomatic agreement that would push Hezbollah back past the Litani River, which on average is about 6 miles north of the border, beyond Hezbollah's anti-tank weapons. That's really what Israel wants. And that is prescribed by Security Council Resolution 1701. So Hezbollah was already supposed to be doing that. One of the leading partners that is helping the U.S. with this is France. They are hosting a Security Council meeting right now over Lebanon, and whose President Emmanuel Macron said today that he was ensuring that a diplomatic voice can be heard.
Il ne doit pas We must not. We cannot have a war in Lebanon. There cannot be a war in Lebanon. This is why we urge Israel to cease this escalation in Lebanon and to Hezbollah to cease this missile launch to Israel.
Senior U.S. officials tell me that they believe Hezbollah and Iran do not want an all-out war in Lebanon, but Hezbollah has to respond in a serious way to those unprecedented attacks that you mentioned at the top, especially using pagers that really hit Hezbollah fighters where they're most vulnerable. U.S. officials also believe that Israel is willing to go to war and obviously is trying to make it clear to everyone that it is with this announcement today and the movement, but that they're hoping Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is willing to forego an invasion. But it's still not clear, Jeff, how any step that Israel could take could really get all of those residents back to their homes.
So what would an Israeli invasion of Lebanon look like?
It would be devastating. Devastating to southern Lebanon, to the people who live there, to Lebanon's economy, which is already in shambles. Take a listen to Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdullah Habib talking to the Carnegie Endowment's Aaron David Miller.
It's all destruction by destruction and nothing. And the people are hurt. Both people are hurt. Israelis are hurt. Lebanese are hurt. While we can find a solution. The more we think about it, is the United States is the key to our, I would say, salvation, if I can say, use this word.
Salvation, that's an incredible word, Jeff, to hear from him when the U.S., of course, is giving Israel the weapons that it would be using in Lebanon. Bottom line is, though, that their hopes are on the U.S., on the West, trying to get some kind of deal that would push Israel to withhold any kind of invasion, and that would somehow get Hezbollah to, again, who doesn't want a full-scale war, but has to respond to those pager attacks, that response to be under the threshold that Israel needs it to be, and somehow move from that to the point where residents can get home. But that's a very, very difficult task.
Yeah, more to come. Nick Schifrin, thanks for this great reporting as always.
Thank you.
Turning our focus now to the 2024 race for president. Both candidates were out in the campaign trail today, laying out their plans to tackle one of the most consequential issues of this election. That's the economy. Vice President Kamala Harris was in Pennsylvania, and Donald Trump campaigned in North Carolina. And that's where our Lisa Desjardins has been reporting.
Today, two battleground states, two battling visions for America's economy.
I intend to chart a new way forward and grow America's middle class. Donald Trump intends to take America backward.
Vice President Kamala Harris's came in a speech to the Economic Club of Pittsburgh. She played up what she calls a pragmatic approach and pledged policies to boost domestic manufacturing. Her proposals largely include tax shifts and incentives, such as a $50,000 tax deduction for new small businesses. Other ideas, she says, will pick up where President Biden's economic agenda leaves off.
A survey of top economists by the Financial Times and the University of Chicago found that by an overwhelming 70 to 3% margin, my plan would be better for keeping inflation low.
Just hours earlier,
they've done nothing. Why didn't she do everything 3.5 years ago?
Former President Donald Trump outlined his economic plan, including tariffs and a push for American businesses to keep jobs here at a factory in Mint Hill, North Carolina.
I will give you the lowest taxes, the lowest energy costs. I will cut your energy in half. The lowest regulatory burden and free access to the best and biggest market on the planet Earth. But only if you make your product here in America and hire American workers for the job.
It comes at a time when the economy consistently tops the polls as one of the most important issues for voters.
41 days from now, we are going to win the state of North Carolina.
The location is politically powerful. Near the bottom of the state, Mint Hill is a suburb of Charlotte, between two powerhouse counties, Mecklenburg, a population center that voted 67% for Biden in 2020, but next door is Union, the largest county that Trump won in 2020. It voted for him 61%. Both counties are fast-growing and business centers. Industrial parks keep popping up. Colin Hughes and his wife opened this coffee shop in Mint Hill over a year ago, a risk, but one that's paid off.
We've been in business for a little over a year and a half, and we haven't gone down yet in a month. Last year at this time we had 4 employees, now we have 10. So for us, the only thing I can really speak on is how we're doing here and how our other friends are doing up and down this strip, and yeah, things are going really well for us.
But the economy here has not been as bright for everyone. Nina Harrell is a Trump supporter.
I lost my job during COVID, and things were getting really good when Trump was in. But right after he went out, it's like, you know, everything started going south, and my company that had been in business for 80 years went under. So I'd been at my job 25 years and lost my job after all that.
She now works at a Chick-fil-A, where she has seen customers cut back, adults buying kids' meals to save money. She's all in on Trump because she thinks the country is on a downward track. We also asked Nina about the Republican candidate for governor, Mark Robinson, and the bombshell report last week from CNN asserting that he previously posted a litany of offensive comments on a porn site, including that he was a Nazi, that slavery should return, and that he enjoyed watching transgender porn. As a candidate, Robinson has adamantly opposed transgender rights. He maintains the CNN report is false, that these are not his words. Despite pressure and resignations from top staff, Robinson has stayed in the race. A candidate Trump has vigorously embraced in the past. Now the Trump-Vance campaign avoids talking about Robinson, and he was not at the event today. So far, the Robinson story hasn't impacted either Nina's vote for Trump or him.
I mean, from just a little bit that I know, to be able to bring up a past from probably 10 years ago, and, you know, it's not like I know if all that stuff's true or not.
But at the coffee shop after our interview, she did confront a different doubt about Trump from someone nearby.
I don't see Trump sacrificing anything that he has for his country.
Madison Belk sees Trump's relationship with the economy differently, that he's a billionaire who wants to continue tax cuts for the wealthy.
He was born rich, and he's for the rich.
And Lisa joins us now from Charlotte, North Carolina. Lisa, it's great to see you. So, based on your reporting, how is Donald Trump's economic plan being received so far?
Republicans like a lot that's in this plan, in particular, lower taxes. Most people like the lower taxes. There are some, as you heard in the piece, especially Democrats, who say that he gives away too much to the wealthy. But something has happened in the last day about a key part of Donald Trump's plan. That's tariffs. More and more conservative groups are saying they have concerns, and they're saying this publicly. Notably, yesterday, the top Republican in the U.S. Senate, Mitch McConnell, came out and said he's not a fan of tariffs, and he went even farther and said tariffs add cost to American consumers. That's the opposite of what Donald Trump has been saying about his tariff plan. Now, Mitch McConnell, of course, is someone that Trump supporters really don't pay a lot of attention to, but they may be paying attention to something else that happened this morning. The Wall Street Journal editorial board came out with a strong statement also about Trump's tariff policy. They wrote, "Hard to believe, but Donald Trump is giving U.S. companies a reason to think that Kamala Harris might be better for their business." The Wall Street Journal, they're talking about the idea that Trump would penalize businesses moving overseas with tariffs somehow. As someone told me this morning, to paraphrase them, if Donald Trump has a problem with the Wall Street Journal on the economy, then he has a very big problem indeed.
Well, let's talk about North Carolina, a battleground state. How much does the scandal involving the GOP candidate for governor, Mark Robinson, how much does that hurt Donald Trump's chances of winning?
It is the hot topic of conversation down here, but people are having it in quiet ways in their home. When you talk to Republican officials here, they tell you on or off the record that they're trying not to be concerned, but you can really feel their trepidation. One Republican official told me, though, that they think ultimately no one can hurt Donald Trump, including Donald Trump, that his fan base is so loyal, they're not worried about Mark Robinson taking him down. On the other hand, there are some who are concerned, and part of it has to do with voters. I talked to one of the voters at this Trump event today, someone who says they're still voting for Mark Robinson. Here's what she said.
I think Mark Robinson is going through a lot right now, and I think that these are just allegations, and I believe that there's a lot that people can do with AI these days, and we just need to be careful what we listen to and what we believe. We 100% believe and trust in Jesus Christ, and we pray for our politicians, and we hope that Donald Trump and Mark Robinson are on that path with us.
I heard that from a number of people thinking that this couldn't really be something that happened to Mark Robinson. They don't trust the CNN reporting. They think maybe it's AI. There's no reason to think this was AI. But there are some Republican officials who say that is also a problem, that there's a base that is supporting Mark Robinson when they want him to drop out. They think as long as he's on the ballot, there may be some Republican voters who don't show up at all, and they think that could ultimately hurt Donald Trump.
Well, as you've been speaking with voters there across North Carolina, what's your sense of where folks might be leaning?
You know, I really got a strong sense of place in that community, Mint Hill, where Donald Trump spoke today. First of all, the factory he was at has grown in the last year. This is a place where the economy is good. Feelings are generally good. Prices are the problem for Kamala Harris here. But this is a community that, honestly, they're dealing with their divide together in a more gentle and, shall I say, like civil way than I've seen in other places. There are a lot of people here who stayed. They don't really like either candidate. What we heard earlier this year, they're not comfortable yet with Kamala Harris. But when I asked them more, Jeff, I heard a lot of people tell me they're less comfortable with Donald Trump. There are more people who say, I can't vote for him. I'm not sure about her, but I can't vote for him. And that is why Democrats have so much hope in this state. The ground game's going to matter here. Turnout will matter. But it is very much anyone's ballgame here in North Carolina.
Lisa Desjardins reporting tonight from Charlotte, North Carolina. Lisa, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I'm Stephanie Tsai with NewsHour West. Here are the latest headlines. At the United Nations General Assembly today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sought to keep the world's attention on his country's war against Russia. He warned neighboring countries in Europe and Central Asia that the war could come for them as well. And Zelensky urged world leaders not to accept any peace proposals from Russia or its allies to end the conflict.
When some propose alternatives, half-hearted settlement plans, so-called sets of principles, it not only ignores reality, but also gives Putin the political space to continue the war and pressure the world to bring more nations under control.
Shortly before Zelensky took the stage, a Russian strike hit the town of Kramatorsk, according to local officials. At least 2 people were killed and a dozen more injured, including children. Tomorrow, Zelensky is set to meet with President Biden in Washington to lay out what he's calling a victory plan. A bipartisan Senate investigation detailed Secret Service failures during the July assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. The interim report from the Senate Homeland Security Committee found mistakes in planning, communications, and the use of resources. The report also found that the Secret Service was notified about an individual on a nearby roof about 2 minutes before the gunman opened fire. And 22 seconds before the shooting, a local officer sent a radio alert that was not relayed to vital Secret Service personnel. Trump was wounded in the ear in the July 13th shooting. 1 rally-goer was killed and 2 others were injured. Congress has passed a temporary measure to keep the government funded ahead of next week's deadline. This evening's vote in the Senate was 78-18. Earlier in the day, the measure passed the House, with Republican Speaker Mike Johnson relying on the support of Democrats to supply a large number of the votes. The bill funds most agencies at current levels through December 20th, avoiding a pre-election shutdown. The bill also includes more than $200 million to bolster the Secret Service. President Biden is expected to sign it. A federal judge has approved a $600 million settlement for residents of East Palestine, Ohio. A freight train derailed there last year, releasing plumes of toxic smoke and chemicals. People who lived within 20 miles of the disaster site are entitled to compensation. Those who lived within 2 miles of the derailment can get up to $70,000 per household for property damage and $25,000 per person for health problems. Compensation decreases for people farther from the scene of the accident. Roughly 55,000 claims were filed. In Los Angeles, a gunman hijacked a city bus, leaving 1 passenger dead. The driver was held at gunpoint and forced to drive through downtown L.A. in the early hours of the morning. Police trailed the bus for an hour before it stopped and the suspect surrendered. Also in California, an explosion injured 6 people at the Santa Maria courthouse today. Authorities detained one suspect and said they believe the explosion was intentional. The court complex was closed for the day. Still to come on the NewsHour, one family's journey to access gender-affirming care after their state banned it for trans youth. Why Missouri executed a prisoner even though the victim's family said his life should be spared. And a new book takes a hopeful view of the climate crisis, asking, what if we get it right?
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein studio at WETA in Washington, and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
Ukraine's president today at the United Nations warned that Russia is preparing to attack Ukraine's nuclear plants. At the same time, Iranian officials have repeatedly stated they are interested in resuming nuclear diplomacy. Nick Schifrin is back to speak with an official who is central to both challenges. Nick?
Yeah, Jeff, central to both challenges because the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, is responsible for monitoring and ensuring the safe use of nuclear power around the world, and for inspecting countries' nuclear programs. Rafael Grossi is the Director General of the IAEA, and he joins me now. Director General, thank you very much. Welcome back to the NewsHour. As we just said, today at the UN General Assembly, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of, quote, planning attacks on our nuclear power plants and their infrastructure. Do you have any corroboration for that accusation?
Thank you very much. As always, a pleasure to talk to you. No, we don't have that information. Of course, we are aware of the statement by the president. We don't have that. Let me simply say on this thing that we have said very clearly at the UN Security Council and elsewhere that nuclear power plants should never be attacked, wherever they are. And let me also say that, as you may remember, the IAEA has personnel deployed not only at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, but also at every other nuclear power plant in Ukraine: Rivne, Nitsky, South Ukraine, and Chernobyl. So we are present in all these sites.
So is the context for this is Russia's occupation at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which you visited just a few weeks ago, and as well as your presence, as you just said, at other nuclear power plants. And Ukraine and you have pointed out that for these nuclear power plants to stay safe, they need to have electricity. Russia has deliberately targeted Ukraine's electricity infrastructure. Is there a higher concern today that the electricity that these plants need to maintain their safety could be cut off?
This is a permanent concern of ours. In reality, there have been already 8 complete blackouts at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And of course, we are aware of the events and incidents on other parts of the electric grid and the infrastructure. So we are also monitoring that. We have established as an additional measure a system to assess and analyze the critical substations to the nuclear power plants from, of course, a perspective of nuclear safety in all of them.
Let me switch to Iran. This week at the UN, you met Iran's new foreign minister, who is well known to you, a former nuclear negotiator for Iran. And you said you see a, quote, expressed willingness to re-engage with us in a more meaningful fashion. Why do you say that, and what does that actually translate to?
Because I was told so. So I heard the foreign minister who said that. I also got a letter from President Pezeshkian during the summer indicating that his willingness to meet with me. And we are precisely one of the things we were doing with Foreign Minister Arakchi, whom I know very, very well and has a lot of experience in nuclear matters and negotiations. We are preparing the ground for that meeting, which should be in their own interpretation, should mark a clear progress, a turning point, as they say. So I have to see. There are lots of things that we need to discuss, and we are preparing for that.
So among the things that, of course, you need to discuss is a problem that you've had for years, which is that Iran has failed to explain uranium traces found at undeclared sites. Do you believe that they are interested in finally providing those explanations?
Well, you know, I have to continue. I should never give up. I'm hearing a high official of a member state of the IAEA. Of course, there is a history, and we always have that in mind. But you know, we trust, but we verify. So we hope that this will be the case, and that we will be able, at long last, like you say, this has been going on for a long time, to move to a better place.
What about restrictions on some of your inspectors that Iran has placed? Do you believe that they might lift those?
They won't do that. They indicated, unfortunately, that the inspectors, they have taken out of our roster of inspectors visiting different facilities in Iran, which had been taken out of that list, will not be restored to it. So I am frankly frustrated about this. But as I said to one of your colleagues, that ship has sailed. We continue. We will be, you know, trying to do the best we can, and we will certainly do.
And the larger context for this, of course, is what you've called the turbocharging of Iran's nuclear program, enriching uranium up to 60% purity. Last month, the IAEA said Iran added nearly 50 pounds of highly enriched uranium, exceeding what it would need to create at least 3 nuclear weapons. Do you believe you understand that you can understand the baseline of Iran's nuclear program? And do you believe that that means you could have negotiations?
That is exactly what we want to do. We want to reestablish a credible baseline on, with regards to the material, with regards to the production capacities in terms of centrifuges and other things which are truly indispensable to prepare. I'm not talking about a final or a wide-ranging negotiation. I'm talking about preparing the grounds for that. If you don't have or the IAEA does not have the ability to say what is there, what is present there, then the basic foundations for a sound negotiation are simply missing. And I believe my Iranian counterparts understand this. So let's hope that this re-engagement, re-establishment of contact, my upcoming visit to Tehran will be a positive one.
Rafael Grossi, Director General of the IAEA, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
The political battles over the rights of transgender Americans have led to difficult decisions for a number of families, especially those living in states with restrictions on transition-related medical care for minors. Laura Barón Lopez has the story of one family's journey to access that care.
When are we leaving? 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
14-year-old Ryan and his single mom, Mia, have waited over a year for this day. They're getting ready for a doctor's appointment.
Yes, can you put that away?
But that appointment is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, more than 600 miles from their home here in Austin, Texas. It's a journey they're making because Ryan is trans.
This is something that you didn't just decide one day. You felt this for a long time.
Yeah, I was really young. I was 6 and I knew for sure that I was not a girl. He's always a dude. He's always a little dude. And then right before he came out, he had cut his hair. And looking back on it now, like cutting all his curls off and everything, like I can see how he was starting to align, and just in hindsight makes it way more clear than it was at the time. But yeah, it's always been who he's been.
Ryan saw doctors and therapists for years before starting medication around the age of 10 to temporarily pause the effects of puberty. A few years later, he began testosterone treatments, which can lead to things like hair growth and a deeper voice. All those steps fall within guidelines for gender-affirming care, which is supported by major U.S. medical associations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics. But around the globe, medical experts and government health officials haven't been in complete agreement. Gender-affirming medical care for minors has come under increased scrutiny.
If they really feel that their best choice is to mutilate themselves, then they better wait until they're an adult.
As conservatives, from local lawmakers to the Republican presidential nominee, have used it to mobilize their base.
Can you imagine you're a parent and your son leaves the house and you say, Jimmy, I love you so much, go have a good day in school, and your son comes back with a brutal operation? Can you even imagine this?
Lies spread by former President Donald Trump and others in his party about things like surgeries on minors have helped fuel a wave of state legislation. In 2021, Arkansas became the first state to ban transition-related medical care for those under 18. Since then, restrictions have passed in 25 more states, home to 40% of the nation's trans youth, including Texas. Its law went into effect last September. It revokes the licenses of doctors who provide gender-affirming medical care to minors and requires anyone on treatment to be weaned off.
It was terrifying. Like, it was immobilizing. I pounded the pavement. I knocked on doors. Like, I did my best as like a mom and as a constituent to like plead my case, to plead our family's case. I watched experts get disregarded and dismissed. I watched facts and evidence be ignored, and they voted for it anyways.
What's your message to those lawmakers who passed that ban?
You don't know the people you're affecting. You don't know how much of a impact that has on them, how dangerous it is.
As the measure moved through the Texas legislature, Ryan and Mia were told his doctor couldn't see him anymore. They lost access to his prescriptions and had to stretch the medicine they did have as long as possible. Mia started looking for care in other states, but between the cost of travel, the appointment, and the medicine, they couldn't afford it.
There's no way. I'm already barely scraping by. I don't have extra, if my car breaks down, I don't have extra funds. There's days where I had to choose between gas or food, you know what I mean? There's days where I went hungry so my kid could eat.
Mia ultimately connected with the Campaign for Southern Equality, a nonprofit focused on LGBTQ rights. Its Trans Youth Emergency Project helps families cover the cost of travel for out-of-state treatment.
Ready?
Mia got Ryan an appointment at a University of New Mexico clinic in Albuquerque. But she still didn't have enough money to cover the entire cost of the trip. Enter Elevated Access, whose volunteer pilots fly patients living in places with abortion or gender-affirming care bans to out-of-state appointments for free.
Clear for takeoff, you can proceed on course.
A pilot we're just calling Clyde to protect his identity volunteered to fly Ryan and Mia from Austin to Albuquerque in his Cessna.
The biggest surprise for me is how I reacted emotionally to this need. It just seemed so political, so ridiculous because it was political.
I think it's stupid. We shouldn't have to take a private plane to go to a fully different state for some little vials of medicine and a shot. I don't think the old men should be making laws about something that doesn't affect them at all. Our pilot, the people that go out of their way, that risk it, that are risking their livelihoods or just putting themselves at risk for no reason, than just they're kind and they understand what's at stake, and that's the part that it gets to me. It gets me in my heartstrings.
This way. And I'll see you tomorrow, maybe.
Absolutely. Thank you. Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
Ryan,
really
can I give
appreciate
you
it.
a hug?
You are a hero
Thank you.
today, for sure.
You
Have a
bet.
good day.
The next morning, Ryan and Mia arrived for their appointment with Dr. Michelle Hutchison, a pediatric endocrinologist. About half her patients are now from Texas.
I hate that this is happening to my families. Being transgender is hard, transitioning is hard, and then you're doing all of this in the background of everybody coming at you and telling you that it's wrong. How would you not have anxiety? How would you not have depression? It's just a mountain to overcome.
And there are new obstacles. Texas's Attorney General has tried to access medical records of trans patients getting care out of state. Trans Texans can no longer change their gender on birth certificates or driver's licenses. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court is set to decide whether bans like the one in Texas are constitutional.
Transgender insanity, the hell out of our schools.
And Mia says that if Trump is reelected, she'll move her family out of the country.
The stakes are that high. It is that scary. I wouldn't stay. How could I do that in good faith and be a good parent?
But for now, Ryan's care moves forward. Dr. Hutchison said Ryan was handling his treatment well, gave him a new testosterone prescription, and scheduled a follow-up appointment for 6 months.
I'm excited. I know now we have plans set in place, resources available. I'm happy.
Oh, I love you. Yeah, today's a good day. I've been emotional all morning, but it's a good day. It's happy tears. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. I don't care anything.
They went to a pharmacy nearby to fill the prescription.
Oh, thank you very much.
A moment of relief amid near constant struggle. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barone Lopez.
Last night, the state of Missouri executed 55-year-old Marcellus Williams over the objections of the local prosecutor and against the wishes of the murdered victim's spouse. Williams was convicted of the 1998 murder of Felicia Gale, who was stabbed more than 40 times in her home in suburban St. Louis. As William Brangham explains, Williams maintained his innocence throughout decades of incarceration.
Jeff, no physical evidence ever linked Marcellus Williams to the crime scene, and there was only one black person on the jury that convicted him. Earlier this year, the St. Louis County prosecutor filed a motion to overturn the conviction, calling it a, quote, manifest injustice. It cited a lack of credible evidence, ineffective trial counsel, and racial discrimination in jury selection. For more on this case, we are joined by Jonathan Potts. He was Marcellus Williams' lead trial lawyer. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. I know this has got to be an awful day for you all, and I wonder if you could just, how are you doing? How's the defense team doing? How's Mr. Williams' family doing?
Thank you, William. As you can imagine, everyone's devastated right now. It's been a very emotionally draining past 72 hours. There's been a lot of effort and a lot of support to keep Mr. Williams alive, but obviously we failed last night. And when that failure happens, you take it personally and you take it hard.
Do you believe in your heart of hearts that the state executed an innocent man yesterday?
Yes, of course I do. We don't take these cases unless we believe in our clients, and that's why we fought for them for years.
I know that just on Monday, you were even arguing his appeal in front of the state Supreme Court. And one of the things you were arguing about was the DNA that was found on the murder weapon in this case. Can you tell us what was going on there?
Yeah, so years ago, we found DNA on the murder weapon, which was a bloody kitchen knife. And that actually led one of the prior governors in Missouri to halt Mr. Williams' execution back in 2017. It's always been believed by us that that DNA was going to belong to the true killer. And as we were systematically excluding everyone, what we found out is that the DNA on the murder weapon belonged to the original trial prosecutor. And at a hearing last month, the trial prosecutor admitted that he'd been handling the bloody kitchen knife without gloves 5 times before trial, contaminating the evidence.
How do you make sense of all of this? I mean, despite the objections of the current occupant of the prosecutor's office, who didn't want this to go forward, Ms. Gale's own family, this tainted DNA evidence that you're describing, how do you explain that this execution still took place?
I think you have to look to leadership that's not being responsive to the communities that they're supposed to be serving. Now, to be clear, as you said, the local prosecutor's office recognized that this was not a fair trial. And They were the ones who filed the motion asking a court to throw out Mr. Williams' conviction death sentence. We were locked arm in arm. And what the families has said is they never wanted a death sentence in the first place. And yet here they were 20 years over and still having to deal with this. The victim didn't believe in the death penalty. The victim's husband didn't want Mr. Williams to be executed. And then the rest of her family didn't want him to be executed. It was state level leaders who were pushing this through despite the public's concerns.
The current governor of Missouri, Mike Parson, supported the state's action, was encouraging that this execution go forward. He put out a statement yesterday. I want to read you a part of it. He wrote, "Mr. Williams has exhausted due process and every judicial avenue, including over 15 hearings, attempting to argue his innocence and overturn his conviction. No jury nor court, including at the trial, appellate, and Supreme Court levels, have ever found merit in Mr. Williams' innocence claims." What do you say to the governor's response there?
I say that he didn't receive due process, and that's exactly why the prosecuting attorney's office was trying to correct this. There was an execution that was set just a few months ago, and everyone was scrambling trying to stop this. And at a hearing that just occurred just a few weeks ago, we heard for the very first time from the original trial prosecutor from 20 years ago, where he admitted that he had removed at least one black juror from the jury because in part that person was black. Now, you can talk about 20 years of due process, but we didn't hear about that until a month ago.
I mean, every year, apart from this particular case, every year on average, there's, I think it's 4 cases where someone who is on death row is found to be innocent, is exonerated, and is set free. I'm just curious what you think this case reveals about this broader system in our country to execute people when the evidence really can be questioned.
I think that the important message that I hope people will take away from this is that the public knows that the justice system isn't perfect. All those exonerations that you're talking about, the public sees that, and the public accepts it. What the public wants to hear is that when the system makes a mistake, it is going to admit that mistake, it's going to fix it, and it's going to promise to be better. That's not what happened here. This is a typical scenario where there's a fear about admitting that you are wrong because you think that it's going to undermine public trust, but it's really that resistance that's undermining the public trust.
All right, that is Jonathan Potts, the lawyer for Marcellus Williams. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you, William.
One of the global problems being addressed at this week's UN General Assembly is the climate crisis. Multiple wars and other geopolitical tensions have cast a particularly sobering shadow over whether nations can meet meaningful pledges they've made. But tonight, a more optimistic conversation about what individuals can do. Amna Nawaz recently spoke with marine biologist Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson about her new book, What If We Get It Right?
Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, welcome to the NewsHour. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the title itself of your book kind of reframes the entire conversation around climate change. It forces us to imagine success instead of failure. Why frame it that way?
I don't know if it's success so much as possibility, right? What if we get it right has a question mark at the end of it. And I feel like at the very least, we should not assume failure. And acknowledge that getting it as right as possible absolutely matters. This is not apocalypse or paradise. It's really like, how close can we get to paradise?
You start the book with this question. You say that you're most often asked at parties when people find out what you do. I'm going to use the safe for TV version here. The question is basically, how screwed are we? So what do you tend to say when people ask you that?
Well, we're pretty screwed unless we all roll up our sleeves and do something, right? I mean, the place where I learned to swim, the waters off of southern Florida, reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit last year. Those are literally hot tub temperatures. Coral reefs cannot survive that. All species on this planet are evolved to have a pretty narrow range of temperature, salinity, humidity, comfort zones. And so we're getting to just be out of the comfort zone of current modern life on Earth, including humans. I mean, there are places where it is too hot for normal human life now. So we're going to have to figure out how to adapt to be more resilient to things. And so getting it right is not just about stopping things from getting worse. It's about how do we adapt to this world that is already changed and is going to continue to change.
There's a short passage from your book I want to share here that kind of captures your approach. You write, humans have evolved to not leap into a void. That's dangerous. So we need something firm to aim for, something with love and joy in it. And we need the gumption that emerges from an effervescent sense of possibility. So, Ayanna, when you talk about getting it right and those possibilities, what are those possibilities? What's the something firm to aim for?
I think it's really important to understand that we basically have all the solutions we need. We already know how to make energy that's clean and renewable. We already know how to green buildings and be more efficient with our energy. We know how to do public transit, and high-speed rail would be amazing to have in the US, wouldn't it? And composting and bike lanes and regenerative agriculture and protecting and restoring ecosystems. I just want people to understand that we have the solutions we need. It's the implementation of those solutions that's really not up to the pace that we need. There's a lack of political will that's holding us back. There's some cultural change that needs to happen in order to shift the status quo. But it really is possible. There are so many possible futures that are better than the trajectory we're currently on. So yeah, I mean, I love that word gumption, and possibility is the thing that I hold on to, even though, I'm not an optimist per se. I'm a scientist and a realist. I know that there's a lot we could each be doing to make sure we have the best possible future.
Can I ask you more about that lack of political will? Because that's often where the finger pointing goes, right? There's political divisions that fuel that lack of action. There's enough people who don't believe that climate change is real or that human action could change the directions right now. How do you look at that?
Well, first, I find it most jarring once you learn that a lot of those politicians are just pretending they don't believe it because it's politically expedient. They know that the science is real. It's just a game, right? And to play that game with the future of life on Earth is unforgivably reckless. But I think the opportunity in there is we don't even really have to talk about the climate crisis in order to agree on the solutions. So, for example, it is Iowa and Texas that have the most wind energy in the United States. And that's not because there's a bunch of hippies running around. It's because it makes economic sense. It's because they're good jobs. And the same with the Inflation Reduction Act. It's mostly red states that are benefiting from the surge in manufacturing, for example, batteries for electric cars and things like that. I think that's what's missing in a lot of this conversation.
What about at the individual level? From all the conversations you feature in your book, what do you take away in terms of what's standing in the way of people acting at an individual level to do what they think they need to address climate change?
I think some people think their part of it doesn't matter. I think some people don't know where to start. And to those people, I would say it absolutely matters. Our actions add up. We're voting with our dollars and our time and how we spread the word and use whatever influence it is that we have. More broadly, I've sketched out something that I call a climate action Venn diagram. And that's 3 simple circles. And the first one is, what are you good at? So what are your skills, your resources, your networks? What can you specifically bring to the table? The second one is, what is the work that needs doing? There are hundreds of climate and justice solutions, so pick one and get moving. And the third circle is, what brings you joy or satisfaction, right? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And finding each of us that sweet spot in the center, that's what we should be doing.
The book is called What If We Get It Right? Visions of Climate Futures. The author is Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to speak with you.
Thank you.
And that's the News Hour for tonight. I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here at the PBS NewsHour, thanks for spending part of your evening with us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
On an American Cruise Line's journey, travelers experience the maritime heritage and culture of the Maine coast and New England islands. Our fleet of small cruise ships explore American landscapes, seaside villages, and historic harbors, where you can experience local customs and cuisine. American Cruise Lines, proud sponsor of PBS NewsHour.
At BDO, I feel like a true individual. People value me for me. They care about what I want, my needs, my career path. I matter here.
Supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information at macfound.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. This is PBS NewsHour West from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington and from our bureau at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
You're watching PBS.